Captain Sarah Chun pressed her palm against the cool metal of the observation deck window, watching the stars blur into streaks of light as the Defiance dropped out of hyperspace. The familiar blue-white glow of Earth hung in the distance, but something was wrong. The orbital defense platforms that should have been twinkling like a protective necklace around humanity's home were dark. Silent. "Ma'am, we're receiving an automated distress beacon from Luna Base," Communications Officer Rodriguez called out from his station. His voice carried the kind of tension that made experienced spacers pay attention. It's just repeating the same message over and over. Sarah turned away from the viewport, her reflection ghosting across the stars. At 35, she had already seen more combat than most officers twice her age. The frontier wars had aged everyone quickly, but the ceasefire 3 months ago was supposed to give humanity time to heal. "Play it." The message crackled through the bridge speakers, distorted by distance and interference. "This is Luna Base Commander Walsh. The hegemony has broken the ceasefire. They came without warning. Earth's orbital defenses are compromised. Civilian evacuation is in progress, but God help us, they're targeting the colonies too. All ships, return to your home systems. Protect what you can. This is our last transmission." The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of life support systems. Sarah had served with Walsh during the siege of Kepler, 442b. He was a good man, the kind who would never abandon his post. If he was sending out final transmissions, Luna Base was gone. "Tactical, give me a full sensor sweep," Sarah ordered. "I want to know what's out there before we get any closer." Lieutenant Zhang's fingers danced across his console. Long-range sensors are picking up debris fields where the defense platforms should be. Multiple hegemony signatures in Earth orbit. They're maintaining a blockade formation. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. The hegemony was a collection of alien species that had united under the banner of bringing order to the galaxy. They viewed humanity as chaos incarnate, a species too unpredictable and violent to be allowed unrestricted space travel. The war had been brutal, with the hegemony using their technological superiority to push humanity back to their core systems again and again. The ceasefire had been humanity's idea. They needed time to develop new technologies, new strategies. The hegemony had agreed, believing that humanity would eventually accept their place as a client species under alien supervision. They had been wrong about humanity before. "Long-range communications, give me a connection to Admiral Hayes at Fleet Command," Sarah ordered. Rodriguez worked at his station for several minutes before shaking his head. "All official channels are being jammed, Captain, but I'm picking up scattered transmissions on emergency frequencies. It sounds like the colonies are under attack across the board." Sarah felt her jaw clench. She had grown up on New Zion Colony, where her parents still lived. Her brother commanded a cargo hauler that ran supplies between the outer settlements. If the hegemony was hitting everything at once... Captain Dr. Elizabeth Reeves spoke up from her position at the science station. The ship's chief researcher was technically a civilian, but she had proven invaluable during their deep space survey mission. "I'm reading some unusual energy signatures from the hegemony ships. Their weapons seem more powerful than what we encountered during the war." "How much more powerful?" "If these readings are accurate, they could crack a planetary crust with sustained bombardment. This isn't just an invasion force, Captain. They're equipped for total annihilation." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. Total annihilation meant the hegemony had decided that humanity could not be controlled or contained. They were going to solve the human problem permanently. "Captain Chun to all hands," Sarah spoke into the ship's intercom. "As you've all heard by now, the hegemony has broken the ceasefire. They've attacked Earth and our colonies without warning. This appears to be an extermination campaign, not a conquest." She paused, choosing her words carefully. The Defiance was a long-range survey vessel, not a warship. Her crew of 43 included scientists, engineers, and support staff. Most of them had families scattered across human space. "I know many of you are thinking about your loved ones right now. I am too, but we cannot help them by rushing headlong into a trap. The hegemony wants us to react emotionally, to scatter, and be picked off one by one. We're going to do something else." Sarah straightened, feeling the weight of command settle on her shoulders. "Dr. Reeves, what's the status of the Prometheus project?" The scientist's eyes widened. "Captain, The project is still in theoretical stages. We haven't completed a single successful test. But the mathematics work out? Yes, but then we're going to make it work. How long do you need? Dr. Reeves stared at her for a moment. The Prometheus project was humanity's attempt to level the playing field with alien technology. Instead of trying to match hegemony energy weapons and force fields, human scientists had taken a different approach entirely. They had looked at the fundamental forces of the universe and asked a simple question: what if we could make small things very, very heavy? With the ship's fabrication facilities and a dedicated team, I might be able to produce a working prototype in 72 hours, Dr. Reeves said slowly. But, Captain, even if it works, one ship cannot take on an entire hegemony fleet. Sarah smiled grimly. Who said anything about one ship? Navigation. Set course for the Tau Ceti shipyards. If they're still operational, we're going to gather every human vessel we can find. The Defiance changed course, its engines pushing the ship toward the outer colonies at maximum burn. Behind them, Earth's blue marble grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared among the stars. 3 days later, Sarah stood in the main cargo bay of the Defiance, watching Dr. Reeves and her team work on their prototype. The device looked deceptively simple, a cylinder about the size of a baseball, covered in monitoring equipment and magnetic containment fields. The principle is based on gravitational manipulation, Dr. Reeves explained as she made final adjustments. We create a localized field that dramatically increases the effective mass of any object within its influence. A grain of sand becomes as heavy as a boulder. A boulder becomes as heavy as a small moon. And you can control this effect to a degree. The field strength is adjustable, and we can program targeting parameters. But, Captain, you need to understand the implications. If this works, we'll have created a weapon of unprecedented destructive potential. Sarah nodded. She understood the implications better than the scientist realized. Humanity had always been good at turning scientific discoveries into weapons. It was one of the things that made the other species so nervous about them. The Defiance dropped out of hyperspace near the Tau Ceti system, and Sarah's heart sank. The shipyards were gone, replaced by an expanding cloud of debris and superheated metal. But her tactical officer was already calling out contacts. Multiple ships on sensors, Captain. Human signatures. They're broadcasting identification codes. Within hours, Sarah found herself in command of a small fleet. The cargo hauler Prosperity, captained by her own brother Marcus. The mining ship Deep Strike with its crew of asteroid miners who knew how to handle explosives. The passenger liner New Hope that had been evacuated from the inner colonies, carrying 3,000 refugees, but also a complement of former military personnel who had volunteered to fight. Most importantly, the heavy transport Anvil had arrived, carrying the automated manufacturing equipment that had been evacuated from the Titan industrial complex. If they could find raw materials, they could build more Prometheus devices. The way I see it, Sarah told the assembled captains during their encrypted conference call, we have two choices. We can run for the galactic rim and hope the hegemony doesn't follow us. Or we can remind them why they were afraid of humanity in the first place. Captain Torres of the Deep Strike spoke up first. My miners aren't soldiers, Captain Shun, but they know how to crack rocks, and they're not afraid of hard work. What do you need from us? Raw materials, rare earth elements, heavy metals, anything Dr. Reeves needs to mass-produce these gravity weapons. How long would it take your people to strip mine one of the outer asteroids? Give us proper equipment, and maybe 48 hours. But, Captain, what makes you think this will work? The hegemony has better shields, better armor, better everything. Sarah smiled. Because they're thinking like warriors, Captain. They're trying to win a conventional fight. We're going to change the rules of the game entirely. Over the next week, the small human fleet worked with desperate efficiency. The miners extracted raw materials from 3 different asteroids. The Anvil's manufacturing bays ran continuously, producing Prometheus devices and the specially designed delivery systems Dr. Reeves had created. Meanwhile, Sarah gathered intelligence from the scattered refugee ships and emergency broadcasts. The news was uniformly bad. New Geneva had fallen after a 3-day siege. The agricultural worlds in the Centauri system had been scorched from orbit. Mars had gone silent 2 days ago. But there's also good news. Humanity's military had not been caught completely off guard. Admiral Hayes had managed to evacuate most of the fleet from Earth before the orbital bombardment began. Scattered reports indicated that human forces were regrouping in the outer systems, preparing for a counterattack. "The question," Sarah said during another command conference, "is whether we wait for the official counteroffensive or take action on our own." Dr. Rees had been working almost nonstop for a week, and exhaustion showed in her voice. "Captain, I've managed to produce 12 functional Prometheus devices. Each one has enough power to affect approximately a cubic kilometer of space. But they're untested in combat conditions." "Then, we'll test them," Sarah decided. "There's a hegemony patrol group operating near the Vega system. 3 ships, probably gathering intelligence on human refugee movements. We're going to hit them hard and fast, then disappear before reinforcements arrive." The attack came at dawn, Vega system time. The hegemony patrol was consisting of 2 destroyer-class vessels and a heavy cruiser, all with the characteristic curve hulls and bioorganic weapon systems that marked them as Zephyrian designs. The Zephyrians were one of the founding members of the hegemony, a species that had evolved from pack hunters and retained their predatory instincts. The human ships approached from the system's asteroid belt, using the Deep Strike mining equipment to tunnel through several large rocks and create concealed firing positions. When the hegemony ships moved into optimal range, Sarah gave the order to fire. The first Prometheus device struck the lead destroyer amidships. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the ship began to buckle as sections of its hull suddenly became exponentially heavier. Support struts that had been designed to handle normal gravitational stress crumpled like paper. The ship's own momentum tore it apart as different sections experienced wildly different gravitational effects. The second destroyer tried to change course, but 2 more Prometheus devices bracketed its position. The gravitational fields didn't just affect the ship's structure. They also interfered with the hegemony's advanced propulsion systems. The destroyer found itself pulled inexorably toward a gravitational anomaly that should not have existed. The heavy cruiser was larger and better armored than the destroyers. It survived the initial gravitational assault and began returning fire with its plasma cannons. But Dr. Reeves had programmed the Prometheus devices to work in sequence, creating a cascading gravitational effect that grew stronger over time. "Their shields are collapsing," reported Lieutenant Zhang from the tactical station. "The gravitational fields are interfering with their energy systems." Sarah watched as the proud hegemony cruiser was slowly crushed by forces it could not understand or counter. She felt no satisfaction in the destruction, only a cold determination to make the aliens pay for what they had done to humanity. "All ships, withdraw to the rendezvous point," she ordered. "We've sent our message. Now let's see how they respond." The response came faster than anyone had expected. Within 6 hours, long-range sensors detected a hegemony fleet moving toward human space. Not just any fleet. A full battle group with at least 30 ships, including several of the massive dreadnoughts that had broken the back of humanity's resistance during the war. But Sarah was smiling as she watched the sensor reports. "They're angry," she told her assembled captains. "Good. Angry enemies make mistakes." "Captain," Dr. Reeves interrupted, "I'm reading some troubling data from our attack. The Prometheus devices worked better than expected. Too well, perhaps. The gravitational effects were stronger and lasted longer than our models predicted." "That's good news, isn't it?" "Maybe. Or maybe we've created something we can't control." "Captain, I think we need to be very careful about how we use these weapons. The gravitational fields we're generating could have effects beyond our target zone." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. Dr. Reeves was right to be cautious. Humanity had always been good at creating weapons, but they had not always been good at understanding the consequences. Still, the hegemony had chosen to make this a war of extermination. In a fight for survival, caution was a luxury they could not afford. "Continue production of the devices, Doctor, but start working on safety protocols and containment procedures. We're going to need a lot more firepower before this is over." The Defiance and its growing fleet disappeared back into the asteroid fields, preparing for the next phase of their campaign. Behind them, the wreckage of 3 hegemony ships drifted in space, silent testimony to humanity's newest weapon. In the depths of space, gravitational anomalies continued to pulse and fluctuate around the battle site. The effects would not fade for weeks. And somewhere in the hegemony command structure, alien strategists were beginning to realize that they had seriously underestimated their human opponents. Again, Admiral Vexthera of the Hegemony Third Fleet stood before the holographic display in her command chamber, her four arms moving in agitated gestures that would have meant death rage in her species' ancient culture. The twisted wreckage of 3 ships rotated slowly in the blue-green light, their hulls compressed and torn by forces that should not exist in normal space. "Explain this to me again," she commanded in the clicking, harmonized language of the Zephyrians. Her translator implant would convert her words to the common tongue for the mixed-species crew, but she preferred to think in her native language when angry. It helped her focus her predatory instincts. Science Commander Krell, a hulking brutehari whose species had contributed their engineering expertise to the hegemony, manipulated the holographic controls with his massive clawed hands. "The gravitational readings from the battle site are unprecedented, Admiral. Our ships were subjected to localized gravity wells measuring between 8 and 12 times normal planetary strength. That is impossible. No species in the galaxy possesses gravitational manipulation technology on that scale. The energy requirements alone would demand a planetary power core." "Yes, Admiral, which is why our analysts believe the humans have developed an entirely new approach to the problem. Instead of generating artificial gravity, they appear to be manipulating the fundamental forces that create gravitational effects." Vexthera's predatory mind raced through the implications. During the war, humanity had proven frustratingly adaptive, finding new ways to counter every hegemony advantage. But this was different. This was not adaptation, but innovation on a scale that threatened the entire balance of galactic power. What is the status of the human homeworld? Earth remains under blockade. Population centers are contained, orbital defenses neutralized. However, we have lost contact with 17 patrol groups across human space. All disappeared after investigating refugee movements or industrial activities. The Admiral's claws extended unconsciously, scraping against the metal deck. 17 patrol groups meant nearly 60 ships, and their crews vanished without sending distress calls or tactical data. The humans were not just fighting back, they were hunting. "Show me the pattern of disappearances." The holographic display shifted to show a 3-dimensional map of human space. Red markers indicated the last known positions of missing patrols, scattered across dozens of star systems. But Vexthera's trained, I could see the underlying strategy. The humans were targeting isolated groups, testing their new weapons, and gathering intelligence about hegemony fleet movements. "They're preparing for something larger," she concluded. "Recall all patrol groups to defensive formations, and send a priority message to the Hegemony Council. We need reinforcements." On the bridge of the Defiance, Sarah Chun studied the same star map from a very different perspective. Over the past 3 weeks, her small fleet had grown into something approaching a proper task force. Refugee ships had brought news of other human survivors, scattered groups that were slowly coalescing into a resistance network. The Prometheus project had been a spectacular success. Dr. Reeves now had production facilities on 5 different asteroid bases, turning out gravitational weapons at an increasing rate. But more importantly, other human scientists had begun developing complementary technologies. "The quantum entanglement communicators are finally working," reported Commander Jackson, Sarah's new intelligence officer who had arrived aboard a refugee ship from the Proxima Centauri science station. "We have secure communications with Admiral Hayes and the main fleet, plus at least a dozen other resistance cells." Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders. For weeks, she had been operating in complete isolation, making strategic decisions that could affect the entire war without knowing what other human forces were doing. Now, finally, they could coordinate their efforts. "What's Admiral Hayes' status?" "The main fleet is hiding in the Orc cloud around Wolf 359. They've got about 200 ships, including most of the heavy cruisers that escaped from Earth." "But Sarah," Jackson hesitated. "The Admiral wants to know what the hell you've been doing out here." "Apparently, hegemony forces across 3 sectors have gone into defensive mode. They're scared." Sarah smiled grimly. "Good. Fear was a weapon she intended to use." The quantum communicator crackled to life with Admiral Hayes' voice. "Captain Chun, I want a full report on your activities and the status of this gravitational weapon project. Admiral, we've successfully deployed 12 Prometheus devices in combat situations. Each one has eliminated multiple enemy vessels with 0 human casualties. Dr. Reeves estimates we can produce 50 more devices within the next 2 weeks. There was a pause on the channel. Captain, I've seen the intelligence reports from the battle sites. These weapons of yours, they're leaving gravitational anomalies that persist for weeks after deployment. Do you understand the potential consequences? Sarah exchanged glances with Dr. Reeves, who was monitoring the conversation from her station. They had discussed this issue extensively over the past few days. The Prometheus devices were indeed leaving lasting effects on local spacetime, but the alternatives were worse. Admiral, the hegemony is conducting an extermination campaign. They're not interested in conquest or subjugation. They want to eliminate humanity entirely. Under these circumstances, I believe collateral effects are acceptable. Captain Shun, you are relieved of independent command. Report to my position immediately for reassignment to the main fleet. Sarah felt her jaw clench. She had expected this conversation, but hearing the words still hit like a physical blow. Negative, Admiral. My fleet is currently conducting essential research and development operations that cannot be interrupted. Captain, that was not a request. You're operating outside the chain of command with experimental weapons that could have catastrophic consequences. Report for reassignment immediately. Admiral Hayes, Dr. Reeves interrupted. This is Dr. Elizabeth Reeves, Chief Scientist of the Prometheus Project. Sir, I need to inform you that Captain Chen's tactical decisions have been essential to the success of our research program. The data we've gathered from combat deployments has allowed us to improve the technology dramatically. We now have weapons that can disable enemy ships without completely destroying them. Sarah raised an eyebrow at that. They had been working on capture and disable protocols, but she did not know they were ready for field testing. Explain, Doctor. Admiral, the latest Prometheus devices can create graduated gravitational fields. Instead of crushing enemy ships immediately, we can disable their propulsion and weapon systems while leaving life support intact. This allows for interrogation of prisoners and capture of intact technology. The channel was quiet for several minutes. Sarah knew that Admiral Hayes was a good officer, but he was also a conventional military thinker. The idea of turning the hegemony's technological superiority against them would appeal to his strategic mind. Dr. Reeves, how many ships would you need to capture a hegemony-heavy cruiser intact? With our current technology and proper tactical support, a single Prometheus device could disable a cruiser-class vessel. Captain Chen's fleet has proven highly effective at coordination and deployment of the devices. Another pause. Captain Shun, you will continue your current operations with expanded authority. But I want detailed reports on all weapon deployments and any anomalous effects. And, Doctor, I want a full technical briefing on your gravitational manipulation technology. If we're going to win this war, we need every advantage we can get. Sarah felt relief wash over her. Understood, Admiral. We'll transmit our complete tactical and scientific data within the hour. After the communication ended, Dr. Reeves approached Sarah with a concerned expression. Captain, I may have overstated our capabilities regarding prisoner capture. The graduated field generators are still experimental. How experimental? We have a working prototype, but it's only been tested in laboratory conditions. Deploying it against a real hegemony ship could produce unpredictable results. Sarah considered this information. They needed intact hegemony technology to understand the aliens' improved weapon systems. But risking their growing tactical advantage on an untested system seemed foolish. How long until you're confident in the technology? Give me another week of testing, plus combat data from at least 2 more standard Prometheus deployments. Then, I should be able to guarantee successful ship capture. You have 1 week, Doctor, because I just received intelligence that changes everything. Sarah activated the main display screen, showing a tactical map of human space. Commander Jackson, show Dr. Reeves what our reconnaissance drones found in the Rigel system. The map shifted to show a massive hegemony construction project in orbit around Rigel B, a gas giant with abundant heavy elements in its atmosphere. Hundreds of ships worked in coordinated formations, building what appeared to be a weapon of unprecedented size. What are we looking at? Dr. Reeves asked. According to our analysis, Jackson replied, it's a planetary bombardment platform. When completed, it will be capable of sterilizing entire worlds from several light years away. The energy output calculations suggest it could crack a planet's crust or completely strip away an atmosphere. Dr. Reeves stared at the display in horror. They're building a weapon to destroy every human world simultaneously. Sarah nodded grimly. The construction rate suggests completion within 6 weeks, which means we need to test your ship capture technology immediately. We need to know exactly how their new weapons systems work if we're going to have any chance of stopping that thing. Over the next 48 hours, the human fleet prepared for their most ambitious operation yet. Intelligence indicated that a single hegemony heavy cruiser was conducting surveys in the Deneb system, apparently searching for hidden human installations. It was the perfect target for testing Dr. Reeves' new technology. The Defiance and her escort ships approached from the system's outer planets, using gravitational slings to accelerate to attack speed without revealing their engine signatures. The hegemony cruiser was methodically scanning the inner planets when the humans struck. The first Prometheus device activated directly beneath the alien ship, creating a localized gravity well that immediately disabled its main engines. But instead of the crushing force that had destroyed previous targets, this field was carefully modulated to apply pressure gradually. Gravitational containment field stable, Dr. Reeves reported. The target ship is immobilized but structurally intact. Life support systems appear to be functioning normally. Sarah watched the tactical display as the hegemony cruiser struggled futilely against forces it could not understand or counter. The ship's weapons systems fired randomly at empty space, unable to target enemies that were outside their technological paradigm. Now for the difficult part, Sarah muttered. How do we board an alien vessel without getting killed by automated defenses? The answer came from an unexpected source. Marcus Chun, Sarah's brother and captain of the cargo hauler Prosperity, had been listening to hegemony communications throughout the battle. Sarah, they're broadcasting a surrender signal. It's in multiple languages, including standard galactic diplomatic codes. Sarah blinked in surprise. The hegemony species were known for their martial pride and determination. Surrender was almost unknown among their warrior castes. Are you certain? Positive. They're requesting permission to communicate with Human Command Authority. Apparently, they want to discuss terms. Dr. Reeves looked up from her instruments with a puzzled expression. Captain, I'm reading some unusual energy signatures from the captured ship. Their power systems are fluctuating in ways that don't match our intelligence data. Could they be preparing to self-destruct? No, it's more like they're running diagnostics on their own systems, as if they're trying to understand what happened to them. Sarah made a decision that would change the course of the war. Open a channel to the hegemony ship. Let's see what they have to say. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the alien vessel. Admiral Vextheros stood in the center of the command space, her 4 arms held in a gesture that human xenologists would recognize as formal respect. Behind her, other hegemony officers worked frantically at their stations. Human Commander, Vextheros began in accented but clear standard galactic. I am Admiral Vextheros of the 3rd Fleet. I request immediate communication with your senior command authority. Sarah stepped forward. I am Captain Sarah Chun of the Earth Defense Forces. You are currently prisoners of war. State your business. Captain Chun, my ship has been disabled by a technology that should not exist. Our analysts calculate that your gravitational manipulation capabilities exceed those of any known galactic civilization, including the precursors who built the ancient jump gates. Sarah kept her expression neutral, but inside she was filing away valuable intelligence information. The precursors were a mythical species that supposedly built the faster-than-light travel network used by all modern civilizations. If the hegemony was comparing human technology to precursor artifacts, they were more impressed than they were admitting. Your point, Admiral? My point, Captain Chun, is that the hegemony may have made a serious error in our assessment of human capabilities. There are members of the Hegemony Council who believe that humanity could be contained or controlled. This encounter suggests that assumption was incorrect. Dr. Reeves moved to Sarah's side and whispered urgently, Captain, their energy readings are off the charts. Whatever they've been doing to improve their weapons systems, it's based on technology one don't recognize. Sarah nodded almost imperceptibly, then addressed the alien admiral again. Admiral Vextera, humanity did not seek this war. The hegemony broke a negotiated ceasefire and began extermination campaigns against civilian populations. We are defending ourselves. Captain, I understand your position, but you must understand ours as well. The hegemony exists to maintain stability across the galaxy. Humanity has always been viewed as a destabilizing force, a species too aggressive and unpredictable for peaceful coexistence. And now, Vextera's predatory features shifted into what might have been a smile. Now, Captain, I believe the Hegemony Council will need to reconsider their long-term strategy regarding humanity. Your species has demonstrated capabilities that fundamentally alter the balance of galactic power. The question is whether this development leads to negotiation or escalation. Sarah felt the weight of decision settling on her shoulders. This conversation could determine the future of human civilization. But before she could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the human fleet. Captain, Lieutenant Zhang called out urgently. Long-range sensors are detecting massive hyperspace signatures. Multiple hegemony fleets are converging on our position from 4 different vectors. The trap was closing, but Sarah Chan was beginning to suspect that she and her people were not the ones caught in it. High Admiral Zorith Kai of the Hegemony Supreme Fleet studied the tactical hologram with growing unease. 4 full battle groups were converging on the Deneb system, representing nearly a quarter of the hegemony's total military strength. The largest concentration of force deployed since the war began. The human ships had vanished. Report, he commanded in the deep, resonant tones of his species. The Krillians were an ancient race that had joined the hegemony early in its formation, bringing their gifts for strategic thinking and long-term planning. Fleet Commander Threshka, a Brutari female whose scarred carapace told stories of 100 battles, gestured at the hologram with one massive claw. The humans detected our approach approximately 4 hours before fleet convergence. They executed a coordinated withdrawal using gravitational slingshots around the system's gas giant. By the time our forces arrived, only debris remained. What sort of debris? Admiral Vextera's flagship, the Sovereign Will. It had been completely disabled, but left structurally intact. We recovered the crew alive, but Admiral Vextera requested immediate private consultation with Hegemony Command. Zorith Kai's sensory tendrils twitched with curiosity and concern. Vextera was one of their best tactical minds, a warrior who had never requested anything in 20 years of service. For her to demand private consultation after a defeat suggested that the situation was more complex than simple military action. And the humans' gravitational weapons? No trace, Admiral. Whatever technology they're using leaves no detectable signature once deactivated. Our science teams believe they have developed a completely new approach to manipulating fundamental forces. The High Admiral moved to the central command console, his 4-meter frame casting long shadows in the dim lighting of the Hegemony flagship. Around him, representatives of 6 different species worked at their stations, each bringing their unique talents to the coordination of the fleet. It was this unity of diverse capabilities that had made the hegemony the dominant power in the galaxy for 3,000 years. But now a single species with primitive technology was challenging that dominance using methods none of them understood. Fleet Commander, what is your assessment of human military capabilities based on current intelligence? Threshka consulted her tactical displays before responding. Admiral, human conventional forces remain inferior to our own. Their ships are slower, their weapons less powerful, their shields weaker. However, their gravitational manipulation technology appears to negate all of those advantages. Explain. A human force consisting of converted civilian vessels successfully disabled and captured one of our heavy cruisers without sustaining any damage. Our analysis suggests that a human fleet equipped with these weapons could defeat hegemony forces of significantly superior size and firepower. Zorith Kai absorbed this information with the patience of a species. The Krillians thought in terms of centuries rather than years, considering long-term consequences before making important decisions. What Threshka was describing was not merely a tactical setback, but a fundamental shift in the balance of galactic power. What recommendations do you have, Fleet Commander? Two options, Admiral. We can escalate with overwhelming force, deploying sufficient resources to ensure complete human extinction before their technology spreads. Or we can open negotiations while we still have leverage. And your personal recommendation? Threshka's battle-scarred features shifted into the Brutari expression for grim determination. Admiral, I have fought humans before. They are individually weak, but collectively formidable. Their entire species approaches conflict with a level of coordination and adaptability that exceeds even our own. If we choose escalation, we must be prepared for total war with a species that has just demonstrated the ability to revolutionize warfare itself. Before Zorithkai could respond, his communications officer announced an incoming priority transmission from the Hegemony Council itself. The central governing body rarely interfered with military operations, preferring to set broad policy and allow their commanders tactical freedom. For them to contact him directly during an active campaign suggested that political considerations now outweighed military ones. The holographic display shifted to show the council chambers on the Hegemony capital world. 5 species were represented in the circular chamber, each with their own traditions and methods of communication. But all of them looked concerned. Council Prime Velnara, representing the Zephyrian delegation, spoke first. High Admiral, we have received disturbing reports regarding human technological capabilities. We require immediate clarification of the strategic situation. Council Prime, the humans have developed gravitational manipulation technology that effectively neutralizes our conventional military advantages. A small human fleet has demonstrated the ability to defeat superior hegemony forces without sustaining casualties. The council chamber erupted in a cacophony of translated alien languages as representatives discussed this information among themselves. Zorithkai waited patiently for order to be restored. Council Prime Velnara eventually called for silence. High Admiral, what is your professional assessment of humanity's long-term threat potential? Zorithkai considered his words carefully. The hegemony had been built on the principle that technological and social development should be controlled and guided by more advanced species. Humanity represented the antithesis of that philosophy, a young, chaotic species that refused to accept guidance and insisted on developing their own solutions to galactic challenges. Council Prime, humanity has demonstrated the ability to innovate beyond our predictive models. Their gravitational technology suggests a fundamental understanding of universal forces that exceeds our own scientific knowledge. If they're allowed to continue development, they could become the dominant military force in the galaxy within a generation. More discussion erupted among the council members. Zorithkai caught fragments of the debate through his translator implants. Some members advocated for immediate escalation, deploying planet killer weapons to eliminate the human threat permanently. Others suggested that attempting to destroy such a technologically innovative species might provoke even more dangerous developments. High Admiral, Council Prime Velnara finally announced, the Council has reached a preliminary decision. You are authorized to open diplomatic contact with human leadership to explore the possibility of negotiated settlement. However, you will simultaneously prepare contingency plans for complete human extermination if negotiations fail. Zorithkai felt a chill of apprehension. The hegemony had faced rebellious species before, but they had always been able to resolve conflicts through superior technology and overwhelming force. This was different. For the first time in their 3,000-year history, the hegemony was facing an opponent that might actually be able to defeat them. Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt of the Ross 154 system, Captain Sarachun was learning that command of a growing resistance movement was more complex than commanding a single ship. The human fleet had expanded to over 60 vessels of various types, from military cruisers to converted cargo haulers. Managing the logistics of feeding, supplying, and coordinating such a force required skills she was still developing. Captain, we've got a problem, Commander Jackson announced during the daily briefing. 3 of our ships are reporting engine malfunctions that our mechanics can't repair, and we're running low on medical supplies for the civilian refugees. Dr. Reeves looked up from her research notes. More importantly, we're reaching the limits of our manufacturing capacity for Prometheus devices. We've produced 47 functional units, but creating more will require rare elements that we can't extract from standard asteroids. Sarah studied the reports with growing concern. Success brought its own challenges. The more effective they became against hegemony forces, the more human survivors sought them out for protection. But growth was straining their resources to the breaking point. What about the captured hegemony cruiser? Have we learned anything useful from their technology? Dr. Reeves smiled for the first time in days. Actually, yes. Their improved weapon systems are based on quantum energy manipulation techniques that we can adapt to our own technology. Even better, their power cores use a completely different approach to energy generation. If we can reverse engineer their systems, we could double the effectiveness of our Prometheus devices. How long? With the science teams from university ships, maybe 2 weeks for basic adaptation. Full integration could take months. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. They needed those improvements, but 2 weeks was a luxury they might not have. Intelligence reports indicated that hegemony fleets were massing throughout the galaxy, preparing for a coordinated offensive against all human holdings. Doctor, what would happen if we used our current Prometheus technology on a much larger scale? Say, against a hegemony fleet concentration? Dr. Reeves exchanged worried glances with her research team. Captain, we've been running computer models of large-scale deployment. The gravitational effects would be significant, potentially catastrophic. Define catastrophic. Depending on a number of devices activated simultaneously, we could destabilize local space-time. Ships within the effect zone would be destroyed instantly, but the gravitational anomalies could persist for years. Any planet in the area could experience tidal effects, ranging from severe weather disruption to complete crustal displacement. Sarah felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. The Prometheus project had given humanity a weapon capable of defeating the hegemony's technological superiority, but using it on the scale necessary to win the war could cause damage that made the conflict itself meaningless. Are there any alternatives? We could use the devices selectively, targeting command ships and communication vessels to disrupt hegemony coordination without creating large-scale gravitational effects. But that approach would require precise intelligence about enemy fleet compositions and movements. Sarah was about to respond when alarms sounded throughout the asteroid base. The communications officer's voice echoed through the facility. All personnel to alert stations. We are receiving a broad-spectrum transmission addressed to human military leadership. Sarah hurried to the main command center, where her communications team was already analyzing the incoming signal. The transmission was coming from a hegemony flagship, but it was being broadcast on diplomatic frequencies rather than military channels. This is High Admiral Zorith Kai of the Hegemony Supreme Fleet, addressing Human Military Command. I am authorized by the Hegemony Council to open formal diplomatic negotiations regarding the current conflict. I request immediate contact with your senior leadership to discuss terms for a negotiated settlement. Sarah stared at the communications display in shock. The hegemony was requesting negotiations. After weeks of total war and extermination campaigns, they wanted to talk. Captain, Dr. Reeves said quietly, this could be a trap. They might be trying to locate our command structure for targeted elimination. Or, Commander Jackson added, they might be genuinely concerned about our new technology. A negotiated settlement could save millions of lives on both sides. Sarah realized that she was facing the most important decision of the war. Accept the hegemony's offer and potentially save both species from mutual destruction, or continue the conflict and risk escalating to weapons that could damage the galaxy itself. She activated the response channel. High Admiral Zorith Kai. This is Captain Sarah Chun of the Human Resistance Forces. I am authorized to speak for human military leadership in this sector. State your terms. Captain Chun, the hegemony is prepared to offer humanity autonomous status within our governance structure. You would retain control of your current territories while accepting hegemony oversight of military development and interstellar expansion. Sarah felt her jaw clench. It was the same offer that had led to the war in the first place. Subjugation disguised as diplomacy. High Admiral, humanity has already rejected those terms. We will not accept alien oversight of our internal affairs. Captain Chun, you must understand that your gravitational technology has fundamentally altered the strategic balance of the galaxy. The hegemony cannot allow such weapons to proliferate without oversight. Too many species would be threatened by unrestricted human expansion. And what guarantees would humanity have that the hegemony would honor any agreement? You've already broken one ceasefire to launch extermination campaigns against our civilian populations. There was a pause on the channel before Zorthkai responded. Captain Shun, I am prepared to offer a prisoner exchange as a gesture of good faith. We will return all captured human civilians in exchange for the crew of the vessel you disabled in the Deneb system. Sarah considered the offer. Getting human civilians out of hegemony hands would save thousands of lives. But it would also give the aliens back one of their most experienced commanders, along with detailed intelligence about human capabilities. Hi, Admiral. I accept your prisoner exchange proposal, but I have conditions of my own. The exchange will take place in neutral space, with representatives from both sides present to verify the transfer. And I want full disclosure of hegemony military deployments throughout human space. Captain Shun, I cannot provide strategic intelligence that could be used against hegemony forces. Then, we have nothing to discuss, Admiral. Humanity will continue to defend itself using whatever means necessary. Sarah cut the transmission before Zorthkai could respond. Around her, the command center buzzed with quiet conversation as her staff processed what they had just witnessed. Captain, Dr. Reeves said finally, I think we may have just started something that could change the entire galaxy. The hegemony has never offered negotiations to a species they considered inferior. They're scared of us. Sarah nodded grimly. Doctor, start working on those weapon improvements immediately. Because if the hegemony is scared, they're going to do something desperate. And desperate aliens with planet-killing technology are a threat to everyone. Outside the asteroid base, long-range sensors detected gravitational anomalies throughout human space. The war was escalating, and both sides were preparing weapons that could reshape the galaxy forever. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in the ancient chambers beneath the surface of Nexus Prime, a neutral world that had served as the meeting place for interstellar diplomacy for over 5,000 years. Representatives from 47 different species gathered in the vast amphitheater, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, harmonics, and electromagnetic pulses that the Universal Translator System struggled to process. Ambassador Kethmorin of the Valdori Collective raised her crystalline form to address the assembly. The Valdori were one of the oldest species in the galaxy, silicon-based beings whose perspective spanned geological timescales. When they called for emergency sessions, other species listened. Fellow beings, Kethmorin began, her words resonating through both audible frequencies and quantum fluctuations. We face a crisis that threatens the stability of galactic civilization itself. The conflict between the hegemony and the human species has escalated beyond conventional warfare to the deployment of weapons that manipulate fundamental forces. The chamber fell silent except for the background hum of life support systems, accommodating dozens of different atmospheric requirements. Even species that rarely concern themselves with the affairs of younger civilizations were paying attention now. Ambassador Threshcan of the Neutral Commerce Alliance spoke next. Honored colleagues, our deep space monitoring stations have detected gravitational anomalies throughout the Perseus Arm. These effects are persisting weeks after their initial creation and appear to be interfering with hyperspace navigation routes. Several commercial vessels have been lost attempting to traverse affected regions. Murmurs of concern rippled through the assembly. The hyperspace lanes were the arteries of galactic civilization, enabling trade and communication across vast distances. Any threat to those routes affected every spacefaring species. What is the nature of these gravitational anomalies? Asked Representative Voxen EI of the Ethereal Concord, her energy-based form flickering with patterns of electromagnetic concern. Kethmorin activated the chamber's central holographic display, showing a three-dimensional map of the affected regions. Analysis suggests that both human and hegemony forces have developed weapons capable of creating localized gravitational fields of unprecedented intensity. The humans appear to be using technology that increases the effective mass of targeted objects, while the hegemony has deployed devices that can create artificial singularities. The chamber erupted in alarmed discussion. Artificial singularities were theoretical constructs that could, under certain conditions, grow exponentially until they consumed entire star systems. The fact that such weapons were being deployed in active combat zones horrified species whose memories span the rise and fall of civilizations. What measures are being taken to contain this conflict? Demanded Warsinger Growlthak of the Predator clans, his massive form towering over the other representatives. The clans have no desire to see the galaxy consumed by forces neither side can control. The Galactic Council has attempted to mediate between the warring parties, Kethmorin replied. Both the hegemony and human leadership have been invited to present their cases before this assembly. However, only one party has agreed to participate in these proceedings. The main entrance to the chamber opened with a resonant chime, and a small group of humans entered escorted by Council security forces. Sarah Chun walked at the head of the delegation, flanked by Dr. Reeves and Admiral Hayes, who had finally emerged from hiding to participate in the diplomatic process. Sarah had never seen so many alien species gathered in one place. The diversity was breathtaking and intimidating. Crystalline beings that looked like living minerals, energy creatures that flickered between dimensions, massive armored forms that could crush a human without effort, and delicate insectoid species whose beauty was matched by their obvious intelligence. But she was not here to be impressed. She was here to represent humanity in what might be their last chance to avoid mutual annihilation. Honored representatives, Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. I am Captain Sarah Chun of the Earth Defense Forces. I speak for humanity in this matter. Ambassador Kethmorin's crystalline form shifted to face the human delegation directly. Captain Chun, the Galactic Council is deeply concerned about the weapons being deployed in your conflict with the hegemony. We understand that your species has developed gravitational manipulation technology that exceeds any known scientific principles. Can you explain the nature of these weapons? Sarah had prepared for this question during the journey to Nexus Prime. The truth was complex and potentially dangerous in the wrong hands, but humanity needed allies if they were going to survive the escalating conflict. Ambassador Kethmorin, our scientists discovered that by manipulating quantum field interactions at the subatomic level, we can temporarily alter the fundamental properties that create gravitational effects. The technology allows us to make objects exponentially heavier without adding actual mass. Dr. Reeves stepped forward to provide technical details. The process involves creating localized quantum field fluctuations that mimic the gravitational signatures of much more massive objects. The effects are temporary and controllable, but they could disable enemy vessels without the massive energy requirements of conventional weapons. Representative Voxiniai's energy form pulsed with what the universal translators interpreted as surprise. Doctor, the ability to manipulate quantum fields on that scale suggests a level of scientific advancement that should take most species several millennia to achieve. How did humanity develop such technology so rapidly? Sarah exchanged glances with Dr. Reeves before responding. Representative Voxiniai, humanity has a different approach to scientific development than most species. Instead of following established paradigms, our scientists tend to question fundamental assumptions and explore unconventional solutions. Elaborate, demanded Warsinger Growlthak. Dr. Reeves took a deep breath before explaining. Most galactic civilizations appear to have developed science through incremental advances in established fields. Humanity tends to make sudden leaps by combining apparently unrelated disciplines or by approaching problems from entirely new directions. The Prometheus project succeeded because we ignored conventional wisdom about energy requirements for gravitational manipulation. The chamber buzzed with translated discussions as various species processed this information. Many of them had been observing human development for decades, noting the species' unusual tendency toward rapid technological advancement combined with social and political chaos. Ambassador Kethmorin spoke again. Captain Chun, the Galactic Council understands that the hegemony initiated this conflict by breaking a negotiated ceasefire. However, our concern is that the weapons being deployed by both sides could threaten galactic stability. What assurances can you provide that human gravitational technology will not be used against neutral worlds? Sarah felt the weight of thousands of years of galactic civilization watching her response. These species had built a stable, peaceful galaxy through careful diplomacy and mutual respect. Humanity represented chaos and unpredictability in their ordered universe. Ambassador, humanity has no desire for territorial expansion or domination over other species. We seek only the right to develop our own civilization without external interference. However, we will defend ourselves using whatever means necessary against those who threaten our existence. And if the hegemony escalates further, our intelligence suggests they are preparing planet-killing weapons for deployment against human worlds. Sarah's jaw clenched. They had received similar intelligence through their own sources. The massive weapon platform under construction in the Rigel system was nearing completion, and hegemony fleets were massing for a coordinated assault on every human-inhabited world simultaneously. Ambassador Kethmorin, if the hegemony attempts to implement an extermination campaign against human civilians, we will respond with appropriate force. Our gravitational technology can be scaled up significantly if necessary. The implications of that statement sent ripples of alarm through the assembly. If humanity could scale their technology up to planetary or stellar levels, they possessed the theoretical ability to destabilize entire star systems. Warsinger Gralthak leaned forward, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber floor. Captain Chun, define appropriate force in the context of gravitational manipulation technology. Sarah met the alien warrior's gaze directly. Warsinger, if the hegemony attempts genocide against humanity, we are prepared to use gravitational weapons against their fleet concentrations, their industrial centers, and, if necessary, their homeworlds. The scale of our response will match the scale of their aggression. The chamber fell silent. No species in galactic history had ever threatened to use stellar-scale weapons against civilian populations. The very concept violated every treaty and convention that governed interstellar relations. Captain Chun, Ambassador Kethmorin said carefully, are you saying that humanity would be willing to destroy entire worlds to prevent your own extinction? Sarah felt the weight of her species' future resting on her words. Ambassador, humanity believes in proportional response. We will not initiate genocide, but we will not passively accept our own extermination either. The hegemony must understand that attempting to destroy humanity will result in consequences they cannot accept. Before anyone could respond, alerts began sounding throughout the chamber. Emergency communication channels activated as Council security forces reported massive hyperspace signatures throughout the galaxy. The hegemony was moving. Admiral Hayes stepped forward to address the assembly. Honored representatives, our long-range sensors are detecting coordinated hegemony fleet movements towards 17 human-inhabited systems. This appears to be the beginning of their final extermination campaign. Ambassador Kethmorin's crystalline form flickered with patterns of alarm. Captain Chun, if humanity implements the gravitational weapons you have described, the effects could persist for centuries and affect neutral worlds throughout the region. Sarah felt history pivoting around her words. Ambassador, the Galactic Council has had 3 months to mediate this conflict. The hegemony has rejected every attempt at negotiation and has now begun implementation of genocide against my species. Humanity will defend itself. She turned to address the entire assembly. To all representatives present, your species have maintained galactic peace through strength and deterrence. You understand that some threats cannot be negotiated away. The hegemony has chosen to make this a war of extermination. Humanity will respond accordingly. The chamber erupted in chaotic discussion as representatives frantically communicated with their home governments. Several species called for immediate military intervention to separate the warring parties, while others demanded that the council remain neutral to avoid being caught in the crossfire. As Sarah and her delegation prepared to leave, Ambassador Kethmorin spoke once more. Captain Chun, the Valdori Collective has existed for 70 million years. In that time, we have seen species rise and false civilizations bloom and fade, stars be born and die. But we have never seen weapons that could unravel the fundamental structure of reality itself. Sarah paused at the chamber entrance. Ambassador, neither had we. But we didn't choose this war. The hegemony forced us to develop these capabilities by threatening our existence. Now, they must live with the consequences of that choice. As the human delegation left the chamber, Emergency alarms continued to sound throughout the galaxy. The final phase of the war was beginning, and both sides were prepared to deploy weapons that could reshape the fabric of space-time itself. Behind them, the Galactic Council scrambled to implement emergency protocols designed to protect neutral worlds from the coming storm. For the first time in their ancient history, they faced the possibility that their carefully maintained galactic order might not survive the next few days. In the depths of space, gravitational anomalies began to appear throughout the Perseus Arm as both sides prepared their ultimate weapons. The war that had started as a simple territorial dispute was about to become something that could be felt across the galaxy for millennia to come. The space around Earth writhed with gravitational distortions that bent starlight into impossible patterns. What had once been humanity's blue jewel now sat at the center of the largest battle ever fought in the galaxy's recorded history. 17 hegemony battle groups had converged on the Sol system, their combined firepower capable of reducing planets to asteroid fields. But they had walked into a trap. Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the Defiance, now flagship of the human resistance fleet, watching as her carefully laid plans unfolded across multiple star systems simultaneously. Over the past 3 days, human forces had executed the most complex military operation in their species' history, using gravitational weapons and quantum communication networks to coordinate attacks across dozens of light years. Status report, she called out to her expanded command crew. All human civilians have been evacuated from target systems, reported Commander Jackson. The underground cities on Mars, Europa, and Titan are sealed and shielded. Total evacuation count: 4.7 million people relocated to the deep space habitats. Dr. Reeves looked up from her science station, exhaustion evident in her features after 72 hours of continuous work. Sarah, the gravitational field generators are online and synchronized across all 17 battle zones. We've created the largest coordinated quantum field manipulation in galactic history. Sarah nodded grimly. The plan was ambitious beyond anything humanity had ever attempted. Instead of using Prometheus devices individually against single targets, they had deployed hundreds of the weapons in coordinated arrays, creating overlapping gravitational fields that covered entire solar systems. The hegemony fleets found themselves trapped in localized space where the fundamental laws of physics had been deliberately altered. High Admiral Zoreth Kai, aboard the hegemony flagship Eternal Order, watched in growing horror as his carefully coordinated attack dissolved into chaos. Ships that should have been moving in perfect formation instead found themselves pulled inexorably toward gravitational anomalies that materialized without warning. Weapons systems designed to operate within normal space-time parameters failed catastrophically when fired into regions where gravity fluctuated wildly. Fleet status report, he commanded, his translator implants struggling to process the panic communications flooding in from his scattered forces. Admiral, we have lost contact with the 4th and 7th battle groups entirely, reported his tactical officer. Long-range sensors indicate they have been pulled into some kind of gravitational maze. Their ships appear to be intact, but completely immobilized. And the planetary bombardment platforms? Sir, the weapon platform at Rigel has been destroyed. Intelligence indicates that the humans used coordinated gravitational pulses to collapse it into an artificial singularity. The resulting gravitational anomaly has made the entire Rigel system impassable. Zoreth Kai felt something he had never experienced before in his long military career: absolute tactical helplessness. The humans had not simply defeated his forces, they had fundamentally altered the battlefield itself, creating conditions where conventional military strategy became meaningless. Open a channel to the human command ship, he ordered. We need to end this before they destroy both our fleets. On the bridge of the Defiance, Sarah received the communication request with a mixture of satisfaction and apprehension. The plan was working, but she could see the long-term consequences developing across her tactical displays. The gravitational effects they had unleashed were already propagating beyond the intended target zones. Dr. Reeves, what's the status of the gravitational containment fields? Sarah, we have a problem. The overlapping field effects are creating resonance patterns that we didn't anticipate. The gravitational anomalies are becoming self-sustaining and beginning to expand beyond our control. Sarah felt her blood chill. How long before the effects reach neutral systems? At current expansion rates, approximately 6 hours. After that, the gravitational distortions could affect hyperspace routes throughout the Perseus arm. Before Sarah could respond, the communication channel activated, showing High Admiral Zorthkai on the main screen. The alien commander looked haggard, his usually perfect posture betraying the stress of commanding forces in an impossible tactical situation. Captain Shun, I request immediate ceasefire and emergency cooperation between our forces. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Admiral, your forces initiated this attack. You chose to implement an extermination campaign against human civilians. Why should we cease our defensive operations? Captain Shun, our long-range sensors indicate that the gravitational effects you have created are expanding beyond the battle zones. If this continues, the resulting space-time distortions could make interstellar travel impossible throughout this entire spiral arm of the galaxy. Dr. Reeves moved to Sarah's side and whispered urgently, "He's right, Sarah. The field interactions are beyond our ability to predict or control. We may have created something that could isolate thousands of star systems permanently." Sarah felt the weight of an impossible decision. Humanity had achieved total victory over the hegemony's forces, but that victory might come at the cost of galactic civilization itself. The weapons that had saved her species could end up destroying the very cosmos they sought to protect. Admiral Zorthkai, what are you proposing? Captain Shun, both our fleets possess advanced gravitational technology. If we combine our resources and scientific knowledge, we might be able to contain and gradually dissipate the anomalous effects before they spread further. Sarah looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. These people had followed her through months of desperate warfare, trusting her judgment even when it meant using weapons they barely understood. Now she was being asked to cooperate with the enemy that had tried to exterminate her species. Dr. Reeves, is cooperation technically feasible? Sarah, the hegemony ships we've captured use quantum field manipulation technology that could complement our gravitational generators. In theory, we could create controlled interference patterns to gradually reduce the anomalous effects. But it would require complete tactical cooperation between our fleets. How long would this process take? Minimum 6 weeks of coordinated effort, assuming perfect cooperation and no equipment failures. Sarah made her decision. Admiral Zorthkai, I accept your proposal for technical cooperation, but I have conditions. State your terms, Captain Shun. First, all hegemony forces will immediately cease military operations against human installations throughout the galaxy. Second, the hegemony will recognize humanity as a sovereign species with full rights of self-determination and territorial expansion. Third, your government will provide reparations for the civilian casualties caused by your extermination campaign. Zorthkai's features shifted into what humans had learned to recognize as expressions of deep consideration among his species. Captain Shun, I can agree to the immediate ceasefire. However, the questions of sovereignty and reparations must be negotiated at the highest levels of government. Then, give me a direct channel to your Hegemony Council, Admiral, because every minute we delay increases the risk of permanent damage to galactic civilization. Over the following hours, Sarah found herself participating in the most complex negotiations in galactic history. The quantum communication networks allowed real-time discussion between human leadership, the Hegemony Council, and representatives from dozens of neutral species who were monitoring the crisis. The final agreement, reached after 18 hours of continuous negotiation, reshaped the political structure of the galaxy. Humanity was granted full sovereign status with guaranteed territorial rights and unrestricted technological development. The hegemony agreed to substantial reparations and the establishment of joint scientific committees to monitor dangerous technology development. Most importantly, both species committed to working together to contain the gravitational anomalies they had created. The next 6 weeks tested both human and alien engineering capabilities to their limits. Teams of scientists and engineers from dozens of species worked together in the affected systems, using combinations of human gravitational manipulation and hegemony quantum field technology to gradually stabilize space-time distortions. Sarah spent most of that time aboard hegemony vessels, working directly with alien engineers whose understanding of universal forces complemented humanity's innovative approaches. The cultural exchange was as important as the technical cooperation, as both species began to understand each other's perspectives. Captain Shun, Admiral Zorithkai, said during one of their joint planning sessions, "I must confess that the Hegemony Council seriously underestimated your species' capabilities. Your gravitational technology represents a fundamental breakthrough in applied physics." Sarah looked up from the technical readouts they had been studying. "Admiral, humanity didn't develop this technology to threaten other species. We were simply trying to survive against overwhelming odds. Our scientists asked a simple question: what if we could change the rules instead of accepting limitations? That approach is unusual among galactic civilizations. Most species develop technology through incremental advances over millennia. Humanity appears to make sudden leaps by ignoring established paradigms entirely. Is that necessarily a bad thing?" Zorithkai's translator indicated thoughtful consideration. "Captain, the hegemony was founded to maintain stability across the galaxy. Your species represents unpredictability and rapid change. We viewed this as a threat to established order. And now, Captain Shun, I believe the galaxy may need exactly that kind of unpredictability. The gravitational crisis has shown us that our established approaches to problems may not be sufficient for future challenges." 3 months after the end of the gravitational war, as historians were already calling it, Sarah stood once again on the observation deck of the Defiance. But now the ship was docked at Nexus Prime, serving as humanity's embassy to the Galactic Council. The view outside showed construction ships from dozens of species working together to build new space stations and research facilities. The gravitational anomalies have been successfully contained and were slowly dissipating, but they had left permanent changes to local space-time that would be studied for centuries. Dr. Reeves joined her at the viewport, carrying a datapad with the latest research results. "Sarah, the Joint Scientific Committees have made some interesting discoveries. It turns out that the gravitational distortions we created have actually opened new hyperspace routes that could reduce travel times between distant regions of the galaxy." Sarah smiled. "So our weapons of war have become tools for galactic unity." "In a way, yes. The hegemony's quantum field technology, combined with our gravitational manipulation, has created possibilities that neither species could have achieved alone." "Any word from Earth?" "The reconstruction is proceeding ahead of schedule. The orbital defenses are being rebuilt with hybrid human hegemony technology that should make them impregnable. And, Sarah, we've received authorization to establish colony worlds in the Outer Rim. Humanity is going to expand into previously unexplored regions of the galaxy." Sarah nodded with satisfaction. The war had been devastating, but it had also proven humanity's right to exist as an equal partner in galactic civilization. More importantly, it had demonstrated that cooperation between species could achieve things that no single civilization could accomplish alone. Behind them, the bridge crew was preparing for their next mission, leading a joint human hegemony exploration fleet into the galactic core, where ancient mysteries waited to be solved by species that had learned to combine innovation with wisdom. The war was over, but humanity's journey among the stars was just beginning. And this time they would not be alone.